So Boris Johnson, with 100 days total to get a deal done, with less than 30 of those remaining, has come up with a deal. The deal is interesting. Very interesting, in fact. And there are 5 key points to it, and I want to quickly address them. I have linked, by the way, for those who are interested, the full document down below. We are not going to go through the whole thing, because I can give you the Cliff's Notes, which will save time. The first is that Northern Ireland will leave the EU Customs Union alongside the rest of the UK at the start of 2021, after the transition period. But Northern Ireland would, with the consent of politicians in the Northern Ireland Assembly, continue to apply EU legislation relating to agricultural and other products with what he calls an all-Ireland regulatory zone. This arrangement could, in theory, continue indefinitely, but the consent of the Northern Ireland politicians would have to be sought every 4 years, should they wish to remain a part of this agreement. Customs checks on goods traded between the UK and EU would be decentralised, with paperwork submitted electronically and only a very small number of physical checks, removing that hard border many touted would happen if the EU got their way and we just crashed out. These checks should take place away from the border itself, at business premises, or at other points in the supply chain, therefore reducing the hard border entirely, but getting those who are responsible for checking goods to be a little more proactive, indicating a new agency may have to be created or additional resources required, for example in this case, extra people. Maybe some courtesy cards too. The government is also promising a new deal for Northern Ireland with financial commitments to help manage the changes. I would assume also additional powers. At time of recording, most of the major EU leaders, within the EU and countries, nation-states, that there was a feeling of apprehension that his policies would focus on domestic audience on an upcoming general election and not engaging with the EU. But a number of EU diplomats have seen this as better than expected and as a fantastic compromise. However, there are still big differences on either side. The backstop is mostly just one of many. The main concern for the EU comes down to customs. The fear is that the Prime Minister's offer could pose a threat to Northern Ireland peace process and leave the single market exposed after the UK leaves the EU. Those are considered 2 big no-nos for the EU. The Prime Minister is going to be announcing all of this today in Parliament, which should be quite interesting, and of course, I will definitely cover tomorrow. Politicians have responded to this though. The DUP, who actually propped the government up, or did under May's premiership, they actually say it's actually good. They support it. They say it will allow Northern Ireland to leave the customs union and single market at the same time as the rest of the UK, with Nigel Dodds calling this a massive improvement. Nigel Dodds, for those who don't know, is the leader of the DUP in the House of Parliament. Sinn Féin, a party that does have seats in the House of Commons but doesn't sit in them because they're dicks, say the plans are a non-starter. The Socialist Democrats and the Labour Party over there say it was dead on arrival, and the Ulster Unionist Party argued that Northern Ireland would be left in a perpetual cycle of uncertainty. No, they get to choose if they want to leave. That's the key point. Many Conservatives, who actually rejected Theresa May's deal though, have signalled support for it. Others indicating it would be highly likely that the deal would get through Parliament. Labour Party's Jeremy Corbyn has declared this to be unacceptable, and Joe Swinson has said that Boris Johnson is not being serious about getting a deal at all. Hilary Benn, chairman of the Commons Brexit Committee, called the proposal worse than Theresa May's, saying, "How will it help peace and stability in Northern Ireland if every 4 years there is a divisive debate about whether to follow the UK or EU rules?" That's not the point. The peace process isn't something that's going to be perpetually ongoing. Peace will eventually be achieved. That's the point, and also giving Northern Ireland the decision to walk away themselves. It is their choice. Hilary Benn, you are not better than them. You cannot make decisions for another country without that country's consent. I feel like a hypocrite because Scotland voted to remain in the EU and yet they're having to leave. But I think context is key, and let's face it, any excuse to annoy the SNP is worth it. And on the subject of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon said the proposals were designed to fail. Well, aren't you the optimist? I actually don't mind these proposals. It is a compromise. It's a very clever compromise, but one where we give the power to Northern Ireland, and I think that's clever. I know that this proposal was mentioned in Parliament by Ken Livingstone during PMQs, and it will be very interesting, because Rob did say it will be brought up in Parliament for debate and discussion, to see how politicians handle it. I will be all over this. Those who ask the stupidest questions are going to be those that I hammer the most. Because this is a step. I think it's a positive. I think it's okay. It is certainly better than Theresa May's. I'm still not a fan of Northern Ireland being given separate treatment, but I understand the point of the compromise.